These are premised on the value chain approach with sectors which will target sectors with the highest impact to drive the economy and sustain economic recovery. The key priority interventions focus on the following value chains. First, leather and leather products, textile and apparel, dairy, the tea industry, rice sector, edible oils, the brew economy, and natural resources including mineral and forest, and finally the construction and building materials. The value chain approach ensures rational resource allocation by eliminating wastage of resources occasioned by duplication, overlap, fragmentation, and ineffective coordination in the implementation of the program and projects, while promoting a whole of government approach to service delivery. To create employment, special focus has been given to investment in special economic zones and county aggregation and industrial parks, diversification of export markets, and market access of goods and services from micro, small, and medium enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the government will also undertake the following targeted strategic interventions to support economic transformation. First, the government will continue to maintain macroeconomic stability to enhance security, to foster a secure and conducive business environment while protecting Kenyans and their properties. Second, the government will scale up development of critical infrastructure in the country, such as roads, railway, air, seaports, energy, water, and reduce the cost of doing business and ease movement of people and goods, as well as promote competitiveness. Third, the government will enhance investment in key sectors for broad-based sustainable growth by promoting agricultural transformation, growth in manufacturing, environmental conservation, and climate change mitigation, stimulating growth in tourism and sustainable land use. And all this in management will actually refocus ourselves in terms of how we can get moving in these subsectors. Fourth, the government will enhance human capital development through investment in health, education, and appropriate social safety nets for vulnerable groups, vulnerable population, for improved social and economic outcomes. Fifth, the government will support the youth, women, and even persons living with disabilities through government-funded empowerment programs that leverage on partnership with private sector organizations. Sixth, the government will support county governments through transfer of shareable revenues to strengthen their systems and capacity in service delivery. Mr. Speaker, it's important to notice that it is for the first time since the advent of devolution that the county governments are getting shareable revenue, which is surpassing 400 billion shillings. Lastly, implement various policy and legal institutional reforms that will enhance the efficiency of public service delivery. Let me turn now to investing in climate change mitigation and adaptation to enhance resilience. Mr. Speaker, the effects of climate change have become detrimental to economies across the globe, with extreme weather conditions, events affecting lives and livelihoods of millions of people. The rising cost of adaptation are diverting funds from essential services like healthcare and education, and potentially destabilizing the economies. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has not been spared by these negative effects of climate change. The recent unprecedented floods that our country faced following the prolonged drought in 2021-2022 claimed lives, caused injuries to many people, and wreaked havoc on property, infrastructure, and livelihoods. The government responded promptly and undertook short-term measures to mitigate the devastating impacts of the drought and floods. Going forward, we shall formulate and implement long-term climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies to generate strong resilience pathways. Mr. Speaker, our climate action agenda is informed by the need to restore our degraded ecosystem that include forests, rivers, and wetlands. It is for this reason that His Excellency the President has rallied Kenyans to prioritize environmental conservation, implement aggressive reforestation, afforestation, and wetland restoration programs. and reverse the biodiversity loss and even land degradation. In response to the President's call, the government has stepped up climate adaptation mitigation efforts, including green energy, smart agriculture, decarbonizing manufacturing, e-mobility, and green building, all aimed at the attainment of zero carbon by 2050. I therefore urge all Kenyans to support the government's response to the ecosystem restoration that aims to grow 15 billion trees nationwide by the year 2030. Let me turn to policy, legal, and institutional reforms. Mr. Speaker, while we have made progress as a nation, we remain alive to structural constraints that impede the pace of economic development. Aware that sustainable economic transformation is predicated on timely implementation of appropriate policy, legal, and institutional reforms, I propose the following interventions that will improve the business environment, increase efficiency in public service delivery, and strengthen the accountability and transparency of public finance management. First, let me focus on public procurement reforms. Mr. Speaker, in my last budget speech, I informed this House of the government's plan to fully automate public procurement and disposal processes by implementing an end-to-end e-government procurement system. Mr. Speaker, Phase 1 of e-government procurement system has successfully undergone user acceptance testing and piloting in 12 selected MDAs and counties. This piloting will continue up to December 2024. The system comprises, among others, an e-marketplace, electronic marketplace, for the common use items where prices for various outlets are feasible, allowing intense competition in procurement of these common use items. Once the e-government procurement system is rolled out, all MDAs and executive offices of county governments will be required to fully transition to the system, while state agencies and corporations, county assemblies, and even county agencies will be onboarded in the second phase within the 2024-2025 fiscal year. The system will reduce cost of goods, works, and even services between 10 and 15%, maximize value for money, and increase the transparency of procurement. Second, let me turn to restraining growth of public sector wage bill. Mr. Speaker, the public sector wage bill continues to rise, leaving few resources for development. Public sector wage bill stood at 38.2% of the ratio as a ratio of total revenue in 2021. To contain the wage bill, the government implemented a wage freeze in the financial years 2021-22, 2022-23, in addition to eliminating and streamlining the number of allowances. Further actions planned in relation to containing the wage bill include: first, all MDAs and county governments should review and rationalize their staff establishment to ensure affordability, fiscal sustainability with the right composition and skill sets. Second, the government will roll out a unified human resource information system for the entire public sector starting from 1st July. The system consolidates human resource and payroll data in the public service for access through single warehouse. The system has been linked to the Kenya Revenue Authority iTax to facilitate filing of payee returns. This reform will eliminate the multiple manual and standalone payroll systems. Third, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will continue to streamline allowances paid in the public sector through harmonization and rationalization of categories, rates, rules for allowances. And fourth, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will progressively review allowances and benefits in the future, collective bargaining agreements, and align them to the provisions of allowances policy framework for the public service. Third, let me turn to state corporations reform. In order to address the challenges faced by state corporations, including government-owned enterprises, the government will, First, privatize government-owned enterprises whose mandates are no longer relevant, those that require huge budgetary allocations for bailouts, and those producing goods and services that are more efficiently produced by the private sector. Second, restructure the state corporations through mergers and/or transfer back to parent ministries or relevant state corporations to remove duplication of functions, and enhance the efficiencies and synergies in operations so as to optimize use of limited resources. And ensure state corporations are self-sustaining, generate additional revenue to the exchequer, and also ensure quality service delivery to Kenyans. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to implement policy changes to ensure government-owned enterprises realize their full potential. You will note that in 2023, the cabinet approved the ownership policy for the government-owned enterprises. And this is a key governance reform framework. Mr. Speaker, to anchor the policy in law and to give effect to its operationalization, a draft Government-Owned Enterprise Bill 2024 has been finalized and is undergoing public participation. Once the process is completed and an approval granted by Cabinet, the bill will be submitted to this August House